At our engagement dinner, my future mother-in-law grabbed my hand, examined my ring with this pitying expression, and asked if we couldn't afford a real diamond. The entire table went silent. My fiancé just smiled calmly and said, "Mom, why don't you tell her what you think it's worth first?" What happened next at Cartier made her faint. Literally faint. Let me paint you a picture of the Morrison family. When I first met my fiancé James at a coffee shop, he seemed refreshingly normal: jeans, sneakers, drove a modest Honda Civic. He told me he worked in family business, which I assumed meant something small and local. I had no idea his family owned half the commercial real estate in our city. The Morrisons were old money, the kind that whispers instead of shouts. Their wealth was in trusts, foundations, and investments that had been growing for generations. But here's the thing about old money families: they test people. Constantly. Our first family dinner was at their modest home, a sprawling estate that looked like something from a period drama. James's mother, Patricia, greeted me wearing what I later learned was a $50,000 Cartier watch like it was a casual accessory. "So Sarah," she said over the appetizer course, "James tells me you work in marketing?" The way she said marketing made it sound like I cleaned sewers for a living. "Digital marketing for tech startups," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "How entrepreneurial." Her smile was ice cold. "And where did you say you went to school?" "State University. Full scholarship." The look she exchanged with James's father, Charles, spoke volumes. State school. Scholarship kid. Not their kind. James's sister Victoria was even worse. She worked in philanthropy, which meant she attended charity galas and wrote checks from the family foundation. During dessert, she started talking about her recent shopping trip to Paris. "I found the most gorgeous Hermes bag," she gushed. $28,000, but you know what they say, buy quality once rather than cheap things repeatedly. She looked directly at my Target purse hanging on my chair. The passive aggression continued for months. Every family gathering was a masterclass in subtle insults. They discuss expensive vacations I couldn't afford, reference private school experiences I'd never had, and make jokes about new money people who tried too hard. James defended me when he could, but he'd grown up with this behavior. To him, it was just how his family communicated. To me, it felt like death by 1,000 cuts. But I loved James, and I knew underneath their snobbery they weren't terrible people. They were just protective of their family's status in ways that made them cruel to outsiders. Everything changed when James proposed. James proposed during a quiet walk in the park where we'd had our first date. Nothing fancy or elaborate, just him, me, and a simple question that changed everything. The ring was beautiful in an understated way. It looked like a vintage piece, a clear stone in an elegant Art Deco setting that caught light beautifully but wasn't flashy or oversized. To fit my style perfectly. Classic, elegant, but not ostentatious. "It's perfect," I told him, meaning it completely. "It belonged to my great-grandmother," he said softly. "I've been saving it for the right person." I was touched that he'd chosen a family heirloom over some expensive new ring. It felt meaningful, romantic, and honestly, I was relieved we hadn't spent a fortune on jewelry when we were saving.